So welcome back. We hope that you're enjoying the hour. We certainly are. And as we sit on this Christmas weekend with sort of difficult economic times, a lot of us have question marks, I guess, about what the future is going to hold. It is certainly not the first time that that has been the case in American history. I guess it won't be the last. So Linda and I are back, and you thought it appropriate to talk about those Depression-era Christmases. And some people who lived them will be quick to tell you how joyful they were.
And that's what I remember. You know, my mom and dad were both born in 1931, so I grew up hearing those stories about the Depression and, you know, the homemade Christmas gifts and the joy of family being together. And I think that's a gift that maybe my parents gave me that I hope my children will enjoy, is the knowledge that Christmas doesn't really have a whole lot to do with what you give or what you get. It's the being together. You know, and my mother would tell stories about, you know, they had sugar cane on their farm, and my grandmother would make molasses candy. Doesn't sound particularly exciting to me, but would wrap it and would put it in. Of course, their stockings were literally their stockings that they wore. They didn't have store-bought stockings. The idea of getting up early in the morning and having the jelly with your biscuits and getting a little bit of cocoa if they could get a hold of cocoa.
Did your parents have a tradition? My mother did, because she was born in 1930, of putting an orange in the stocking.
Oh, and in fact, my entire childhood, I got a stick of King Leo candy, and an apple and an orange. And what's interesting is, and I'm really not that old, but we didn't buy fruit at the grocery store every week. It really was a treat when I was growing up. So getting that apple and that orange was such an exciting thing at Christmas time.
Right.
And you normally ask for one gift. And I think that came from that period of growing up where money was tight or non-existent for farmers living in this region, but the ability to be creative, to write, you know, a poem, or to draw a picture, or to make a homemade gift, a quilt.
Right. That you had to think on long before the Christmas season came. You were working on it, you know, in the summer and fall months as well.
And to recycle things that you had, so you had clothing that could no longer be worn, but to use that, you know, they didn't throw away anything. And I think the Depression taught us that material things are less important than the things that we can't see. It's love, it's liberty, it's justice, it's the things that are not limited by financial situation.
It is the sharing of your heart. So I told you this story off camera. I'll tell it now, that I've been told throughout my life of, I guess it was the 30s. And when people couldn't buy presents, but they would wrap up pictures of things that they wished they could give. If I only had the money, I would give you this. But that's sweet because it lets you see what the person really thinks of you. You don't have to have the gift itself, it's the thought.
Well, and I mean, I think that's incredibly profound, and maybe there's a lesson, you know, if history exists for us to learn in the present so that we can guide our futures, what better lesson than what comes out of the Depression, and that's that one, hope springs eternal. You know, that better days are going to come. Life always sort of ebbs and flows, and it's how you deal with the adversity. For someone to give me a picture of something they know would be perfect for me, and yet they simply don't have the wherewithal to give it to me, is almost as good, maybe better.
If not better.
You know, it's caring enough to know me as opposed to running out at the last minute and buying something for me.
Right.
I like that thought. I like the thought. This is Linda, and we know she loves flags and cannons and history books.
Do you know a saying called Christmas gift? Do you know that saying?
I don't.
I couldn't remember if it was a conversation I'd had with you or not. Somebody else in my life who is not related to me has that same saying. It was something that my grandparents would say to my mother and her sisters in the 30s, and so I didn't know if it was some kind of a Southern saying or not.
And it may be something that has permeated so many families, because I think when you talk to people who grew up in the Depression, even now some of my older friends will say, you know, the stuff's never important. The people are important.
Right.
And I think, you know, that's such a simple lesson, and yet each generation tends to learn it over and over again. And Christmas is that season of the year that helps us focus.
And we only have a couple of minutes for this one too, but I think it's interesting, the psychology at play. You and I had talked that you only have really 8 to 10 innocent Christmases in your life that you really remember, yet they form you. And then you're also formed by the stories you hear of your parents and grandparents' memories of Christmas. They're precious, precious times in our lives.
It's so incredibly important that we share those stories too, because just like trees, our roots run deep. And the more that we can bring that out, bring that past out, the richer our lives become. And then it's our responsibility to transmit those stories to the next generation.
So something that I failed to let us talk about yet, but we will when we come back, might be the most important and significant Christmas of all for Chattanooga proper, and that is the establishment of our National Cemetery. Can we talk about that when we come back?
Yes, please.
Okay, we're back in a minute.
We've all become friends. We're friends outside this company as well as at this company. We've grown to know each other. We've grown to enjoy each other's company. We'll go to lunch together. We'll say hello. I just love this group of people.